Welcome back. You're watching Credlin. Well, Melburnians are free at last. Ring of steel surrounding the city came down, as I said, at midnight. And in a major boost for Melbourne's downtrodden hospitality industry, well, the Premier's announced increased capacity for venues from today. Pubs, cafés and restaurants can now serve up to 40 people inside, 70 people outside, with increases to 100 patrons indoors and 200 outdoors expected from the 23rd of November. Restaurateur Chris Lucas is the owner of the Melbourne institution Chin Chin and more. He joins me now. Chris, you've been campaigning for a very long time. These announcements today, how do you think they'll mean for your fellow restaurateurs in terms of just getting some money and getting back on your feet?
Well, of course, as you know, we've been waiting 8 months for these announcements, so we welcomed them, and we really can't wait till, actually, to be quite honest, November 23rd, where we can actually go to some real capacity and we can start to re-employ our significant part of our workforces, which is still sitting at home under the current tight regime.
A lot of businesses are saying to me that they really can't make the numbers work until we get closer to the end of November. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Peter, as you well know, we had such a long, drawn-out lockdown, 500,000 jobs lost, probably 30 to 40% of small businesses won't survive. Many restaurants won't survive. They'll either close the doors permanently, or if they reopen, they may probably close soon after reopening because of ballooning debt. And so we had to open. Most restaurants would be losing money. I know we are losing money at the moment, but we had to bring our workforce back because we've lost probably nearly 20% of our workforce to New South Wales and Queensland during the last few months, as our workers quite rightly have pursued full-time employment. So we were really at a crossroads. I mean, the government, I think the government needs to be a little bit sensitive about what is going on with regards to these reopening plans. I know there's a lot of, positivity, and there should be, around reopening the economy, but there needs to be a deep understanding that it's come at an enormous cost, Peter. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs have been lost. Businesses have been crushed. Our futures have been taken away from us. Our ability to be able to trade has been taken away from us. Decades and decades of hard work to build these businesses, long hours, sacrifices, both personal and family sacrifices. We're all blown out in a decision that saw us being locked down for a good cause to try and save the state against the coronavirus. But it went too far. And now I think it's really important to be sensitive to the case that we're an industry that's been on our knees. We're crippled, as is our city, and we need to bring our workers back, not just, by the way, our hospitality workers, Peter, but I'm imploring the government and the Premier to listen to business and bring all our workers back to the CBD, which needs to be brought back to life. It's going to be a long 2-3 years as we rebuild this city and this state.
I mean, one of the issues with Melbourne CBD is all the other allied businesses and restaurants are one, retail are others. They just can't survive without that worker base. The rents are high, as we know. I know restaurateurs that have literally incurred many millions of dollars of debt just to get through this pandemic, and they won't be alone. There'll be money for JobKeeper, but not money to pay off that debt that now has to be paid off with businesses getting back on their feet. I've got to ask you about contact tracing. Interstate, it's digital, it's QR codes, and restaurateurs, the industry has been at the forefront of developing something with government. Not so in Victoria. Martin Foley, the new health minister in Victoria, was on Neil Mitchell this morning. He was all over the shop. He said that there would still be announcements to make. I think Victorians would be pretty angry that we've been locked down for months and the government hasn't done the work it should have done to have a contact tracing system ready to go as soon as you open your doors again.
Oh, that's absolutely spot on, Peter. As you know, we've got a large restaurant in Sydney. So because we were getting no support or no clarity and we had no dialogue with the Victorian government, we simply took it upon ourselves to lift the same systems from New South Wales, where we were lucky enough to have a large restaurant, and we've applied them to our own operations. And I know that a lot of other restaurateurs have done the same. So we've just got off our own back as an industry. We've worked with our own association, which had a lot to do with bringing back the successful implementation of contact tracing in restaurants in New South Wales and Queensland. So we've just gone about it and getting it done, Peter. I don't know what the government's been doing the last 6 or 7 months. If it focused a little more on talking to business and working with us, rather than talking down to us and trying to fine us at every time there's a small aberration. What the New South Wales and Queensland governments did is they supported us. They didn't send in the police and enforcement and the heavy hand of government. They reached out and worked through the complex issues of contract tracing and managing. A lot of small businesses, Peter, as you know, they don't have the resources, and they really look towards the government to try and get this support. I was very disappointed that Mr. Foley on the weekend, almost proudly announced a crackdown on restaurants and pubs. We don't need a crackdown. We need support. We need help. We want to work with the government. We want to work with the local councils, and we want to keep our guests safe and our employees. No one wants that more than us.
We want to stay open, and we want to avoid a third wave. But unless this mob get their act together and get the basics right, we'll be back there quick as look at you in Victoria, because that's their only answer to lockdown. Chris Lucas, thank you as always.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for your support during this period.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.